Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Reviewing Comics with me, your host, Alexander Turbin. Today we're going to be going over Triumvirate #1 from 1996. But before we get into that, I'd like to show you some of my own work. This is Random Access. It's a full-size, full-color, 12-page comic book that I produce every month called Random Access. And you can get these at patreon.com/Alexander Turbin. It has 3 rotating stories that each month. So every 3 months you get a new part of a story. And there's usually backup stories. This month and the last few months have been by Chris Knox and Paul Courtjohn. But you can also get these at alexanderturbin.com, and there you can find Mutandis and The Forlorn and Cyrene and Queller and basically all of my work that I've done so far. Or you can just message me at alexturbin0441 at yahoo.com, which is my email, or alexturbin0441 at Instagram. So now let's get into this. So Triumvirate #1. This is close to my heart, obviously, because this is a Maine-made comic, and also it's because it was inked by Bill Renfro, who did the inking on Mutandis, and so it's always good to see his work. Written and lettered by Tad Lewis, pencils by Michael Smith, who you may remember was the very last artist of those '90s runs, because he did the final page of Random Access #2. Which had a Mutandis storyline, which shows Vaughn in his half mechanical body. So there's a lot of intertwining of me and my career and these guys. So basically, after we ended Mutandis and after we ended Random Access, Bill went and joined Chad and Michael Smith, and they created this thing, Triumvirate. And it was published by Catacomb Publications, who's Mike S. Zimmerman's production company or whatever. So let's get into this, and then we'll do the look at the story and then backtrack and look at the writing and art, as we always do. This is actually the second attempt at trying to do this. I tried to do it on Friday, but my phone cut out, and so I lost the video, and it was just kind of too much to try it again. So I reread it again, because the storyline is very complex and the plot is very complex and the writing is very complex. So I really don't think I had a really that great of a grasp or handle on the writing of the book. So mainly here, it starts off, I'm going to read some of this, and I'm going to probably stop and read some panels just because it does get a little bit not confusing, because everything is very clean and crisp and very understandable. But it's a little bit, less than confusing. So I received a special message from Janice the other day. Usually her messages have underlying romantic tones. She stopped sending me them since our little talk on the matter. This one wasn't one of those messages. It was different. So he's talking about this person. We don't really know who it is. Later, we glean that he was in the FBI and that he went into this different service of the government. It's like a top secret service. I'm kind of explaining this now because it kind of is a little jarring, because you don't really know like what's going on or who the characters are or anything like that. So he's part of this top secret government agency after something happens to him, and apparently Janice is like his coordinator or handler or somebody higher up or that works in the agency with him that has intel on stuff. So that's basically what it is. But so through the channels, she's gleaned that his ex-partner, because he used to be in the FBI, and his ex-partner has been killed in a very gruesome manner and very wild manner, and he was like ripped to shreds by a creature. So his ex-partner, that is. So his ex-partner had a new partner, David Lynch. So he's been following David Lynch, trying to figure out if he knows anything about what happened to his ex-partner and maybe if he's the killer or all this stuff. And it kind of goes into quite this detail about how he's been tailing him and how David Lynch is this greenhorn. He doesn't really know what he's doing because he has no idea that he's being tailed. David Lynch comes home. He opens the door and turns on the light, and he says, I was wondering when you were finally going to show up. And this guy, which you don't know his name, I kind of wish they had referenced his name in the beginning. He explains that he knew that he was being tailed, and he had some of his other operatives take a look into him. And at first he thought he was one of the cases that he and his partner had worked on, and that he eventually landed on the fact that through a happenstance, he saw a picture of his dead partner's old partner, who was also assumed dead. That because of that, he put together that it was his dead partner's ex-partner, who was also assumed dead. So he's like taken aback because he's been found out, because he thought he was the greatest ever, which really kind of adds to his character and his personality, which is really kind of cool, because I don't think I've ever seen a comic where somebody thinks they're really awesome and really great, and then realize that they're really not as great as they think they are, and it kind of takes them down a peg, which is kind of interesting, and I don't know, it's just kind of cool. So they're just talking about his ex-partner and how they feel about him and what could have happened to him, and David Lynch says that he wasn't the first one to be attacked by this. 2 girls had been attacked on these streets, basically in the city that they live in. It doesn't really say where. I can only assume that maybe it's DC, maybe it's New York City, something like that. But he says that's all the info he knows, and this new guy thanks him, and they kind of have an understanding that he won't tell anybody about who he is or where he's been seen or anything. So one of the things that it says here, it was a lousy time to leave Lois and Erica, but I had to come to Boston. Okay, there we go. They're in Boston. I guess I have to just have this insane notion that I can help with this case and find out who murdered Brian. So Brian is the ex partner, and they're in Boston. So he tells him all about this creature, and it's a creature now. It's a werewolf or something. Or he says that there was some fur and some stuff like that, some DNA, which I don't know if they had DNA back in 1998, 1996. But anyway, they left the fur, and so he's thinking that it's some sort of somebody dressed up as a werewolf, and he's taking it a little too far, or maybe it's a cult thing. They throw the word cult in. So they leave on pretty good terms, and this guy, the thought to be dead partner of Brian, he's walking the streets looking for whoever might have killed his ex-partner, and then he goes back and he remembers back when he and Brian were at this case, and they go to this farmhouse where they think they have some kind of information that there might be some drugs or something like that being sold there or manufactured there or something. So they go to the farmhouse, they bust in, there's all kinds of security there. The 2 of them take out the security pretty easily, and then they bust through the door into the kitchen, and they kind of see that there's another door leading down to a basement. So they take these stairs, and it's very creepy farmhouse out in the woods kind of thing. So they decide to split up, which is, I don't know, I don't think any cops would do that, but they decide to split up, and one goes right, one goes left. And the modern character who's looking for his dead partner comes across a giant room. It's a giant lab with all of these people hooked up to these tubes and these hospital beds and all this scientific stuff, and he's just flabbergasted. He doesn't know what to make of it. He starts to unplug one when slam, a door closes, and it's a mad scientist, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And they have this little banter and stuff about the security and all this kind of stuff, and who they are. And the doctor doesn't really say who they are. He just kind of says that they're a super secret part of the government, that he has no reason being there. And he's really just trying to delay him so that whoever is behind him can get a good shot at him. The guy turns around, starts blasting everything, blows up the whole lab and him with it, and kind of knocks himself out. he wakes up to this face, which is some sort of general, General Alexander Robinson. So I'm guessing that he plays a major role later on. And so, like every good superhero comic, it kind of explains how he gets his powers, which is some sort of electromagnetic energy powers. And he's like, he's realized that he's changed, and he's been put through the paces and testing his powers and stuff. But Brian and his family think that he's dead, and they let him feel that way because it's Project Genome or Gene something. So they convince him Gene Play. It's Project Gene Play. They convince him to join Project Gene Play because he has these new powers, and they're part of the government, and they're trying to save humanity. Blah blah blah. So Brian thinks he's dead and just goes along with his life, gets a new partner as the FBI, still does all of his FBI stuff. So this character, we still don't know his name, which is very kind of jarring. He's walking along, he comes to an alleyway, he sees a creature, and he gives him a blast, and he thinks it's the guy that killed Brian and the girls. And he's like, murderer! And he's thrown into some trash cans and stuff, and then they come to a head, and they don't really fight, which I kind of thought that they were fighting. He's just the werewolf creature, which you kind of can tell it's a werewolf. All right, he's got a big hat, but he's a werewolf, and he just gives him a good zap, and says, "Stay away from whatever I'm doing." And they kind of discuss what their plans are, what they're doing, who they are a little bit. They don't actually say who they are. They just kind of explain that they're after the same killer. And this werewolf guy with the hat says that we're looking for the same person, but for different reasons, and to stay out of his business. So he lets him go, kind of whips him a little bit, lets him go, and then they hear a scream, and there's some people in another alleyway, and he sees this furry creature running off into yet another alleyway. And then he's attacked by the same creature, the same werewolf or whatever, but he's not going to get the drop on him. Before this, he had gotten the drop on him, and he said he had said that the partner in the beginning, he said he was David Lynch, said he was a greenhorn and was unprepared, but he gets a drop on him again, but this time he doesn't, and he just gives him a zap, and he ends up thrown off into the alleyway while he's chasing the real werewolf, the one that isn't in a hat and a coat and everything. He falls down into a sewer drain, and he's like, it's dark and he can't see, and he's getting attacked by this other werewolf. This is the real werewolf, the real bad werewolf, and he gives him a bite. Does that lead to him becoming a werewolf later on? I don't know. But he says, big mistake, uses his powers, zaps him. Does he zap him? He does zap him, but knocks him out, I guess. And so it's over. One punch. So the guy with the hat comes back and kind of just says that he's my brother, and that the feral mind is taking over his mind, and he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's just kind of more beast than human. And he's like, okay, and then he's going to take him back to Anubis to be sacrificed. And so this guy, the ex partner that is presumed dead, who has superpowers, he's like, what if I want to take him back with me to face justice? And the guy in the hat says that would be very unwise. And then all of these werewolf eyes flicker open, and he's like, take him. So I don't know why he doesn't just blast everybody with his powers, but regardless, they tear him apart, and they almost kill him, but they leave him on, I assume this is in an alleyway again, and they leave him with a jacket. That was very nice of him, even though he's all bloodied and torn up. They leave him a jacket, and he kind of just takes off, and he doesn't know why they left him alive, and he still has more questions about what's going on. So that's the first storyline. There is a backup story by somebody else. It's Chad Lewis and somebody else, and I'm not going to get into that. It's only a couple pages, and I think it's just a teaser. And here's number 2. I don't know if number 2 ever came out. if anybody knows anything about Triumvirate, if Bill, if you're watching, please let me know if Triumvirate #2 ever came out, or 3 or 4, or however many issues you got. This. So the writing I really enjoyed a lot. It's very complex and intricate, which he adds some humor into it, some human qualities, and the dialogue is really great. The plot, it moves forward nicely, and the imagery, and the images and the scenes go from scene to scene really in a cohesive manner. But like I said, it's just so complex that it's a little bit hard to keep following the story. Mostly because of the art, which I'll talk about later. So yeah, a lot of this stuff, the story moves smoothly. The characters all have really great dialogue. Everybody has their own voice, their own way of speaking. If somebody's being a little sardonic or a little sarcastic, then that really pops through. If they're being a little cocky and sure of themselves, that really shows through. And it really, the characters really awesome, have really great voices. So I'm really enjoying the writing. I really like the writing in this a lot. The only thing I wish that would have happened a little bit is I wish that they had either taken some of the action scenes and maybe it just moves a little bit too quickly for me, and you don't get a breath. You don't have any chance to realize who this character is, and it's a huge, huge mistake not to give him a name if he's just this enigmatic person that you don't know his name until later. He's I can't remember his name. But you don't even get a first name. You get his last name. And so that really kind of was a mistake, I think, because it really lessens the impact of who this character is. I mean, he's the main character of the book. You should kind of focus on him a little bit. If he's supposed to be mysterious, like Wolverine or whatever, that's fine. But then you also have him say it was a lousy time to leave Lois and Erica. But he's presumed dead. So if he's presumed dead, did they put his whole family into witness protection? And so is that why? But he's a superhero with a family, and he has these contacts in this other government agency, this Janice, who hits on him all the time, or did, and apparently he has a wife and kid, maybe, or something like that. So it's just a very complex story that you really have to, kind of read once or twice or three times to really get a hold of it. And you really have to kind of focus on the settings and the scenes and everything to really get a good grasp of everything that's going on. But that being said, I enjoyed the writing a lot. And my only problem is that it's paced a little bit too fast. And I kind of wish that it had slowed down a little bit to let me really understand some of these characters and where they were going and what they were doing. And another thing is this werewolf character, I kept thinking that he was this one, and I kept getting them confused. So I kind of wish that there had been some sort of I don't know, ability to tell exactly who that it was. Maybe he could have told his name and his brother's name, and then it would have kind of balanced things out a little bit. But I kept confusing the werewolf and his brother and everything like that. But most of that is because of the art. The art, Michael Smith, he's a great artist. Obviously, he went on to do some animation, I think, or character creation for animation or something like that. But his art is fantastic, and it was, really great. It's super heavily influenced by Todd McFarlane. Obviously, anybody that with a half an eye can see that he's so super influenced by Todd that it's oozing Todd McFarlane. Everything from his chins, his nose, his eyes, his hands, especially his hands, his panel work. And that leads to a little bit of a problem because I don't remember if Todd McFarlane was bad at his narrative art. And I'm not saying that Michael was bad at his narrative art. I'm just saying that he could have done things a little bit differently to kind of smooth some of the things that the writer was trying to get across. And his action scenes, I think, are a little a little weak. They don't really transfer to what is going on into the story. It's like some of this stuff, some of the quiet scenes are really great and fantastic and well done. And there's like information that the writer and artist are putting together that you kind of glean, and that really that's a great thing. I kind of wish that like this here, he has this exasperated look on his face when he realizes that he's been found out, him tailing David Lynch, and that he doesn't really, didn't really understand that. I wish that this had been a close up of him being exasperated instead of this panel here, because this is the focus of the panel, and yet it's so small that it really loses a lot of its impact. And some of this stuff, like, it's great to have like things in the foreground, so to place some depth and stuff like that, and some orange juice or whatever he's drinking, and it's part of the story. It's part of interacting, making it more real, making it more relatable and realistic to the reader. But when it becomes a little bit distracting, which is it's kind of happened here, it's really loses some of its impact. But again, like I said, I think Mike is a great artist, and I love Todd McFarlane, and I really think this is great. And everybody starts out mimicking their favorite artist. I mean, I wanted to be Walt Simonson, so you could probably see in my earlier works a lot of Simonson influence. I mean, so how many artists, Frank Miller, Bill Sienkiewicz, John Byrne, I think John Byrne, started out as Neil Adams clones, and they just, their work just looked like Neil Adams completely. But then they deviated into their own process, and I'm sure that's what Mike has done. I haven't seen any of his new stuff, but I'm completely sure that he's gone on to do better and different things. Not so much better, because this looks really good as well. But like I said, some of the narrative art of it, too many close-ups. Like a lot of times I'm talking about how the different variety of characters and interacting with each other, especially fight scenes, is really imperative to get the reader to connect with the action, and because action is the beginning of the action, and then the reaction. So, you have to have all of these different elements of the sequence in order for it to become relevant to your reading. So like they bust in. It's really hard to see what's going on because it's so close to the camera's so close to what they're doing. And then I'm not really sure what this is. Oh, this is one of the bad guys being shot, I guess. And so, yeah, just some of the action is a little bit, it's a little bit hard to understand. It's a little bit hard to see, like, did he shoot him? Or no, he got knocked out by his partner, but he was aiming his gun. But he is Brian, right? And so he's I don't know if this isn't Brian. I think this is supposed to be him, and they look a little bit different. So it's hard to say. See, Brian went around the house and he took him from behind with a karate chop and a smack from that. But it looks a little bit like it's a little bit off to me. I couldn't really understand, and that was why because it all correlates. You have to have something in the story and the action to go on to understand something that happens in the next part of the story, where they were talking about the guards and the surveillance and how we took them out easily enough and stuff like that, which they did do that, but it was a little convoluted, and I didn't really understand it so much. Until my second reading. Once I read it a second time, I fully understood it completely. And that's really not a great aspect for the book. I think in general, any book is that you have to read it more than one time in order to fully understand it. So I do love the art. There's one part here where it's the dreaded arrow. The dreaded arrow. I can't remember where it is. We will get to it. But then here again, we have the action scenes. The first time reading, I did not really understand. He gave him a zap. He's looking that way, which I kind of understand. He gives him a zap. I wish that it was flipped around and this character was shooting that way, so it was kind of flipped around, and he was big and he was small getting hit. It just would have read a little bit more intensely. And then this is an okay scene where he's been knocked back, and then but this big thing looks like it's supposed to be a fight scene, and I kind of just assumed that it was a fight, and then it's not. They're just talking. They're just looking at each other. So this huge double page spread, which is beautiful. It's really nicely rendered, and has really a lot of nice detail and texture and all of that good stuff, line weight and everything like that. But it looks like a fight. Looks like they're going to fight, and then they don't. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Other than that, I mean, I'm nitpicking a lot on Mike's art, but because I really think it's great. But you have to have those flowing elements in your fight scenes in order to fully understand and comprehend what's going on. Like, I was completely lost by this whole scene. I didn't realize that he was chasing him. I thought he was chasing him. I didn't realize that he was gotten blasted. But once again, I pieced it together after I read it the second time, so I fully understood what was going on. So yeah, like I said, I like the art, and I like the story quite a bit. I think I like the story a little bit more than the art, only because clarity for me is the biggest part of comic books. If you're a great artist, and the clarity of your story is a little bit lacking, then I'm going to really go harder on that than if your art isn't so great and your narrative art is fantastic. Chris Bacalo is one of my favorite artists of all time. Maybe not all time. He's definitely top 10, top 20. Here's the dreaded arrow, which you don't even need. It goes from left to right to down to if anything, you needed an arrow that was going from here to here. But the dreaded arrow is there for no reason, but it's there, and we hate the dreaded arrow. So, like I was saying, Chris Bacalo is one of my favorite artists, and he's really great illustrative. But when you look at his Shade the Changing Man, he's toned down all of his superhero antics and stuff, and really chilled out on all of the different perspectives and all that stuff. Everything is very clear. Everything is very readable, and his narrative art is fantastic. Then you go and you see him doing the X-Men or Generation X and stuff, and it becomes a little tedious to read and hard to understand, because he's just he's less about his narrative art, which is a lot of the Image guys are less about the narrative art and more about just the art, and that's kind of what Michael fell into a little bit here. I'm sure that he does better in the next things that he does. I'm sure. So anyway, there you go. Triumverate #1, but in 1996 by Catacomb Publications, and Mike Smith, William Renfro, and Chad Lewis as the writer. And I think it was really good. I'm going to give this a 7.5, only because of its difficulty in reading, and that's probably my biggest drawback on a comic book. If it's hard to read, you're not going to want to read it. If you're confused, you're not going to want to read it. But if there's Triumvirate #2 out there, I'll definitely get it, or 3 or whatever. I would definitely get it, especially if it's in the dollar bin. Would I go out seeking this? Probably not. That's why it's knocked down a little bit. But I'm going to give it a solid 7.5. I did enjoy reading it. I enjoyed reading it probably more the second time. So if you get this book, if you have it and you haven't read it for a while, give it a chance. And it's got a lot of aspects to it that are really kind of interesting and fun to read. So here you go. Triumvirate #1, 7.5. Thanks for watching. And if this is your first time to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. And also giving me a thumbs up. I love the thumbs up. And more importantly than any of that stuff is leaving a comment for if you like this kind of stuff. If you like indie comics, especially 80s and 90s and black and white and stuff like that, let me know, because sometimes I feel like I'm shouting it to avoid. I do love the comments. I do get a few comments from guys, from people, and I really enjoy it and I really love it, but I really need those comments to really broaden my range of things that I'm going to check out for you guys and what you guys really would want to see anyway. Would you want to see more image? Would you want to see more just black and whites, more power comics, more good girl kind of stuff? Let me know because I'm really, really interested in learning what you guys would like to watch. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. And have a great week and keep on creating.